Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 40 of UK League Chat. Joined as always by my co-host Tom, and this week we're also lucky to be joined by the hero of EUS solo queue, Prosfair. Prosfair, how are you doing? I was expecting that, looking at the background, I was expecting the hero of solo queue to be in some sort of dojo or a temple or something, but I'm a bit, underwhelmed if I'm honest.
I'm just a normal guy like the rest of us, humble
Oh,
beginnings.
so
No,
humble.
yeah,
It's working from home, isn't it? It's working from home. Can't go to the dojo.
Exactly.
I commute to my dojo actually, but we're in lockdown, so
Ah,
stuck at
damn it.
home.
Never mind. I thought we'd maybe start on that topic. To kind of ease into the episode, of kind of how that whole shenanigan happened. So, that was a few months back now that you were
Yeah.
basically picking up on issues with the matchmaking that somehow, I don't know, no one was seeing or no one had maybe put in the effort to kind of investigate to the level you did. What was it that in the first place made you think to do it? Did you literally feel like your games weren't as high level, or was it just something you noticed like over at
Uh,
BGG, or?
yeah. I mean, first of all, like I think everyone in the US felt like the game quality was pretty bad at the time. Like this definitely wasn't just me. Like everyone was complaining. But it wasn't actually me who spotted it. I saw a tweet from Barcode where he said something about this, like, oh yeah, if you look at OpGG, none of the games are challenger. Like there's always like mostly Grandmaster players. Um, I mean, this is just like a reply to like in a chain or something of people complaining about solo queue. Um, and I just thought, like, I just looked into that, and I mean, I saw it and I thought, God, this is ridiculous. But I didn't really think much of it, and like time went by, and then there was like another discussion on Twitter about it, and I checked, and this topic came up about like solo queue quality and NA versus EU, and I checked this again and was like, got like, yeah, this looks bad, but like, what if I actually went and looked at the stats? And I saw it, and it was, yeah, like I did my tweet, got like a lot of attention, like a lot of LEC players retweeting it, and Riot in classic Riot fashion did nothing. Uh, so then, like 2 weeks later, I went and got like more stats and got in extra stuff to counter argue some of the things, like oh, what if EU players are scrimming more? So that why. So I went and actually started to try and see if like what the issue was, and then I was like, well, this time I'll do a Reddit thread because if it's a Reddit, if it gets a front page, it's guaranteed to be
Mhm.
seen by a writer. Um, and well, it got to the top of Reddit and it got seen. And would you believe it? Right, immediately, like, oh, we just pushed the button that fixes matchmaking, guys. Don't worry, like, it's all gone. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's even then the US is still not to the level that the other two are, but it's a lot better, obviously.
Yeah. How long did that take then to sort that all out? Do you have any help? Because I know like we see sometimes like some of the UK analysts flash in their Excel spreadsheets and whatnot. Or was it just something you
No,
did
it was
just on your
well,
own?
actually, I woke up thinking I had coronavirus because I was dying. I couldn't sleep because I was that sick. So and I was annoyed by it because I was like I can't sleep because I'm dying and I want to play solo queue, but I can't because the quality's terrible. Um, so I was just like, right, I might as well do some actual work then. And like odds on this actually, odds on what I'm doing actually having any result is minuscule, right? But like maybe it has an impact. And it was like 4, 5, 6 hours of work sat down just like looking, tabulating the stats. Um, at like 3 in the morning while I was dying, of what turned out not to be coronavirus, thankfully. But yeah, and I mean, it ended up changing the whole server. So, for 6 hours of work for,
Yeah.
say, here over US, I'd say it's a worthwhile trade. But at the time, I obviously was just frustrated and didn't really have anything else to do.
Fair enough. So you said it still feels like a bit iffy now. Do you reckon? Is there another
I wouldn't say
Reddit thread coming or what?
I don't think there's any point. I don't think Riot will do anything. But like, it's not that it feels iffy. It's like if you look at the stats, the US still has like
Hmm.
1/3 the amount of games with full challenger that like NA and Korea do. Which and again, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because population-wise, we're in the middle. US players play the most. All three servers have the same amount of Grandmaster, Master, and Challenger players. Like, there's
Mhm.
there's not really any factors that should actually come into play that should mean the US is different, other than that they're calibrated differently.
Yeah.
But I don't think Riot would do anything. I think they've already like done what they wanted to do with it, and
Yeah.
now they think it's an
They've,
acceptable
yeah.
level.
Admitting an issue like openly admitting that they had something messed up in the first place. I don't know. Maybe a stretch for them to do it again, just in case.
Well, they didn't. That's the thing. They didn't really admit that there was an issue. They kind of said like, oh well, we don't really
They
use
just
this
fixed
metric.
it. Yeah,
They,
they
they,
just
they said
kind of
like we
fixed
don't
it.
really use these metrics to say that it's a good game. but we'll increase this metric. But that's just to kind of appease you guys. Like, you pro players don't really know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
I feel like everyone in the US was like,
200
we know our
years
games,
and all that.
we know our games are crap. Like, just please improve them. And they were like, well, we know what's good for you, but we'll listen to you for this time. So I think getting them to that once is kind of all you can expect from Riot,
Yeah.
and a second time
Fair
is
enough.
unlikely.
Fair enough. Let's maybe sort of rewind from that then, because that was, I think, was that like during the off season? I think, wasn't it? Sort of between
April, May, something like
yeah.
that.
Before that, in the spring split, you're obviously playing for NVision, and that was the last time we had you on. Was basically, I think it was literally right before the split started. And I remember at the time the roster you were on was kind of like billed as the potential academy killers, and I think you mentioned when you were on here that maybe like scrims would maybe struggled a bit to start with. It would start sort of picking up going into the split, and to be fair, technically you were academy killers. You beat Fnatic, and I think when I was looking back on it today, I noticed you only even lost to the other top three. You beat everyone else,
Yeah.
in every game. So how do you kind of rate that split? Was that obviously I'd imagine putting a team like that together, you would want to be challenging for the overall split itself. But sort of looking back on it, do you see that it was a relative success? I'd imagine you guys kind of ended roughly where most people would have expected anyway.
I mean, results-wise, obviously, it's disappointing that we didn't get to EU Masters, but we were one best of three away. So it's not the worst, and I think XL was. I mean, they lost to Fnatic, but I think in the regular season they were by far the best team,
Mm-hmm.
and we did make things hard for ourselves by kind of losing a lot of games in the regular season. So like, I think if we played Fnatic in that best of three, we would have beaten them. But or Barrage, for example, we would have beaten them.
Yeah.
Because I think we really ramped up towards the end of the split. But at the end of the day, you can't just judge like success off purely results, right? Like I think the team when we first just started, we had like a lot of differing levels of skill, and everyone was all over the place in how we wanted to play the game. And like scrims really weren't going particularly well, like for the level of play we had. Like I felt like we weren't achieving what we should be doing. But I think everyone put in a lot of work, and I'd say big props to Daruk, honestly. Like I think without him, we would not have managed to get the framework in place to actually get everyone to start playing as a team. And towards like the last 2 weeks of scrims, I think our win rate was really very high against some pretty strong teams. Like as a team, I'd say we were probably scrim wise at least one of the stronger teams in the ERLs, and I thought we were gonna like go top 8, top 4 at EU Masters if we'd have made it there.
Mm-hmm.
We'd kind of made things difficult because I think XL were another strong team, and we had to get past them to get to EU Masters. And then we just kind of flopped on the day as well. Like we played the semi-finals, we played the best of 3 against XL, and coming off like 2 like really strong weeks of scrims, and even like our official games in those last weeks had been
I think it was
like 20
it
minutes.
where you beat Fnatic, wasn't it? In the last, if I remember correctly, it was like near the end somewhere.
It was like 3 weeks before the end, I think. But I wouldn't even say that was like that was kind of like when we were on the start of ramping up. We then had like I think our last game was against M&M, and we had one against I can't remember who the other person was, but the other team was. But I know one of our games was against M&M, and we won in like 22 minutes. And the other game we had was like they were both very clean games. So towards the end, like I think everyone was feeling confident. Like we're doing well in officials, we're doing well in scrims, we've beaten Fnatic. I'd say like it was a bit of a blower that in the start of the split we entered ourselves, so we had to play XL, who was the best team, and also something just didn't quite click on the day. Like I don't think we played bad, but it just kind of felt like we were like okay, like we weren't really doing any like massive mistakes, but XL were like firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Fair enough. So yeah, because to be fair, even if you picked up one extra win against maybe even Barrage or something, went 1-1 against them, then that would have put you against Fnatic, and obviously having beaten Fnatic before,
yeah,
a lot different. Because I think.
Oh no, we'd have been against we would have been against Barrage, and Fnatic would have been against XL.
Oh right,
Yeah.
So even better.
That's like we could have stolen Fnatic's third place spot. That's how it was, because Barrage beat Fnatic in the regular season, I think.
Right.
Once.
Because I think I remember when we were sort of previewing the playoffs, I think we'd even mentioned that you guys kind of looked like if any team could have had a chance against XL, maybe it was you guys, because Fnatic didn't really look that good at the time either, and it was only in the last 3 games against XL where they looked like they were like a title contenders, really.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that I honestly was really surprised XL lost that because I think Fnatic had a lot of flaws. And it looked like I didn't mean to look like that best of five. They realized what the problems were and just managed to band-aid fix the problems and kind of like work around it. And XL just lost to the same game essentially 3 times in a row without like adapting. But I mean, sometimes like that just can happen again. Like we lost to XL kind of doing nothing. So how it goes.
And so then, after after that split, a lot of other obviously players from NVision went into like NLC. I know Yusa went to was it the Baltics, I think, as well at one point. What was kind of decision to kind of not go into the NLC, and how was it actually looking at it as an outsider, looking in for a change?
Well, essentially, I just didn't get any offers I thought would do well. Like I looked at the roster and I thought realistically, this isn't going to cut it, and I was really annoyed by my solo queue performance in Europe. Like for a large part of the split on NVision, I was like Diamond 1 with like negative win rate over the season. And I thought this doesn't make any sense. Like how can I go to Korea and consistently be challenger, like essentially play the best I've ever played in the hardest region, and then I come back and I'm struggling. And yes, solo queue perform like there's like players like Wonder who famously doesn't play much solo queue, and he can obviously play at a world class level. But every player is different, and at least to me, I really feel like when I'm playing my best is when I'm playing my best in solo queue as well. And so I was kind of frustrated, like what is the issue here? That like if I can perform at this level, why is it now that I'm back home I'm performing at this level? And my kind of self realization was like in Korea the environment is really really good. You don't know who the players are, so you don't have any stereotypes like, oh, this guy's bad on my team, like, oh, I'm stuck with this noob again, like, oh, he entered me like a million games, whatever. You can't understand what people are saying. Also, like I've been playing League for so long that like I've been around since Korea was like the most dominant region, so I'm kind of hardwired to think, oh, Korean solo queue's this insane high level. And along with that, everyone's playing all the time. The matchmaking there is a lot better because they have so many more people. So you can queue up at 4 a.m. and you'll get a full challenge game. And obviously in EU you could queue up in midday and you wouldn't get a full challenge game. So you don't need to keep a sleeping pattern. You don't need to, essentially none of the things that you need to discipline yourself for in terms of your mindset actually are checked in Korea. Which I realized was the problem. Is like it's not like the excuse that like you might want to keep telling yourself like, oh, it's like EU is bad, like it's the environment. It's like I wasn't correctly responding to the environment in Europe, which was like I was letting my ego get in the way and saying like, oh, I don't need to try my hardest, I'm better than these players. And that's the kind of mindset that leads you to being stuck like in Diamond 1, losing to really bad players. And the moment you actually start so that's what I want to do was I should be able to hit like 1k LP in Europe. And if I can do that, I know my play will improve and I know I can get to that level because I've done it in a harder region. So I wanted to tackle this problem because I knew if I could tackle this problem, I would see an improvement in my competitive play. And I was just being a bit honest with myself. It's like I knew this team wasn't gonna the offers that I got, I knew they weren't gonna do particularly well. And the other teams that didn't do particularly well in the tournament as well. And I thought, am I really going to manage to am I going to manage to change my mindset and discipline myself and take on a challenge I've never managed to achieve before, whilst also playing on a team and turning up to scrims, keeping a pattern, and like that's going to be my main focus. Am I going to manage to achieve this thing I want to do as a side goal? And I thought that maybe if the team is very good and we're winning and it's a boost to my confidence, etc., and I feel it's worth the time investment anyway. But I didn't really feel like it was worth sacrificing the thing I wanted to do for something that probably wasn't going to lead me to any good results anyway, and probably would just be a frustrating experience playing on a team with players that I consider not of a level to play with. So that was kind of the mindset going in.
So it's kind of like, essentially what you did is you kind of analysed it and you thought, let's think long term and kind of not short term. Like what you can develop by not being in the NLC in this split, long-term benefits you more of a player than actually going short-term, maybe getting some success short-term, but not actually developing as a player as much.
Yeah, I mean, again, like if I'd have got an offer from like Fnatic, I would have accepted it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Again, in an environment like that, I feel like it might have. It's something where like the team is of a high enough level that like all I need to do is work on myself. But for the teams that I got offers for, those wouldn't have been teams like that. These would have been teams where I would have needed to be teaching the other players and the coach on my team about the game and doing drafting stuff, and I would have had like all these responsibilities, and I wouldn't have had enough energy for working on developing myself, which is what I wanted, because again, I wasn't happy with the like level of play that I showed in spring. So that was kind of like that was more the thought process. It wasn't like completely didn't want to play, but just the kind of team offers that I did get, I felt would have been I wouldn't have got success with them anyway, but also would have been detrimental to long-term success. So it would have been a lose-lose. I felt like this way, like I didn't play for a split, but at least I developed something and worked on fixing a problem that I felt I had.
And it's probably, it's especially probably a good thing not to play on a team that you think isn't going to do that well, because it can, even if you play good, it's kind of like can be like a
going in with that mindset. It's not it's kind of doomed. It's doomed to fail if you go in with that mindset, right?
Yeah.
Plus,
if
the team doesn't do well, even if it's your fault or not, it's probably one of those things you've kind of got that on your record now, and people can remember this time. Like, it's kind of a good segue maybe even to the NLC split itself. But when we think of someone like Maxlaw that was playing for Munster, where you kind of expect it to be this sort of comeback for him, where he obviously wasn't in the LEC and had this roster where everyone expected it to probably smash the NLC and make an EU Masters run, and they didn't even make it anywhere near the final of the NLC itself. And that will kind of be a thing now where it could have been, obviously we don't really know what happened with that team, but it could be that there was something, similar sort of thing, that maybe some of the offers you had where there were things that didn't really quite match, and maybe behind the scenes didn't look like the ideal team, but then it's one of those where they just went for it to try and be doing something rather than having a split off. And it could, for someone like Maxwell, maybe is done the opposite, where people could easily look at that and just say, well, if he can't do it in the NLC, then why would we give him LEC offers, something like that. So as a bit of a segue then, what did you make of the NLC itself, and maybe that Munster team is specifically as well? Obviously Shikari on there, one of your long-time teammates, and it was a bit weird to see Shikari playing without you as well, if I'm honest.
I methink I'm just gonna pull up the Leaguepedia for it, because I'm trying to remember the exact orders of the teams, and I'll forget. So
I think Munster finished fourth. No, well, fourth in terms of like. Oh no, they didn't.
Because they lost to. I know they lost to Nordavind in playoffs.
Yeah,
they came third in their group. They were joint win-loss with Tricked.
I mean, honestly, I was watching early on for the early weeks. I was watching, and I felt like everyone was playing badly. That was my impression, because I saw XL lose, or it was either XL lost or almost lost to Riddle. I think the first time
Riddle.
XL lost Riddle in like week 2, week 3, and I watched that game and I thought Riddle played awful. I thought they were a terrible team, and XL lost. So I thought, well, XL clearly had big flaws as well, and everyone was, and there was a lot of people saying that, Riddle are like one of the best teams, and I think they picked up towards the end, but at least at the start of the split, I really got the impression that like every team was bad, which like again like doesn't mean they have bad players, but just. Yeah, like Munster never really. I think Munster was a team that was built incorrectly. I mean, I don't know what I can say about Munster, because I know a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But I don't know how much you do know about all the things.
I think initially when you look at the Munster roster, I think the thing which kind of screamed out to a lot of people who we had on anyway on the show was that the play style was very different from a lot of the players who were kind of being on. The worry is that, yes, these are actually really good players individually, but actually when you look at how each of them plays, they don't really complement each other too much.
Yeah, not at all. I think the team doesn't make sense. I think like I feel like the team has been mismanaged, misbuilt. There's a lot of things I know behind the scenes as well that could cause any team to implode, honestly, and I'm sure that'll come out at some point, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. I don't know what I should say, so I'll not say anything.
Yeah, we've been a bit like that, but yeah, we wait till someone else leaks it, like that's it.
I mean, I could. That things like if I said it now, like it'd be all over like UK Twitter and everyone would be
Exactly.
covering it. But like I don't know.
That would be impressions. So go ahead.
The thing is, it's like I wouldn't get in trouble for saying it, right? Because again, it's not.
But then it would be maybe obvious who's told you. So
we're best not. But like I think the thing which kind of explained it is I actually put Unforgiven in my team of the split because I thought actually for what he did for that roster, like he was brilliant.
I think the team like on a roster that fits him, they'll win EU Masters and he'll go to LEC. This guy's insanely talented.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, like it felt really weird because like it just to me like watching it's like Hiva is playing like a psychopath. Which is how he's want to play. But him and Maxor would just like invade the enemy jungle, whether it made sense to or not, and like die half the time. And you've got this really strong like AD carry that can play like he's good at mages, he's good at all these styles, like he's really versatile. You've got like a really strong weak side top laner. Like I feel like Maxor should have the knowledge to play the game. Like I think he does have the knowledge to like play the game in any style. I think like Maxor should have really kind of been the facilitator in this team, and they should have had like I feel like if the team had played like to have like a laning support that like could facilitate Unforgiven instead of having Kiva roaming, which is like how he wants to play and like playing for mid and like the jungle. I think that would have been a much better style because I feel like you have Shikari like is the best weak side player ever, and you have like this one of the strongest players in the entire tournament on bot lane. So I feel like you just play to bot lane and win the tournament. But they played like from bot to the mid side. It didn't feel very cohesive at all. It's not the way I would have liked to see that team built. But
I think what defined the NLC for me was week 2 because that was when I remember. Looking back at it now, I remember it because I remember us doing the podcast. And it's when BTXL lost to Riddle and then Godsent beat Riddle the day after, and I was like, that kind of defined what that group was at that time because no one knew how good Godsent would be and how early synergy helped Godsent quite a lot. But just the fact that like Riddle, who ended up going to EU Masters, beat BT, now you kind of look at it and think, okay, but then actually lost to Godsent afterwards. It was such a confusing week that week.
Yeah, I think this split, I think there was no complete team. Like there was teams of good players and good individual players, but none of the teams played well as a team. Like they were either mismanaged, miscoached. Like I don't know, some teams like they don't gel. But there was like one of these teams, I look at them and think like, yeah, that team played well like as a team. Like Fnatic played the best as a team, and I thought they maybe had like the 4th or 5th best players overall. And they just kind of got through once again off kind of like other teams just collapsing is kind of how it seemed to me.
I would say that Riddle probably by the end were actually like a cohesive team for me because it's hard to play that many games in a row and not have kind of a good team cohesion.
Yeah, but that's true, right? Like because at the start when they beat XL, I thought like God, this is terrible. Like I don't know what I'm watching, but Riddle are playing terrible, and then they win. So I'm thinking, okay, like this is a disaster for XL. But yeah, by the end, Riddle actually again looked like a legitimate team and did turn it around. But again, like XL clearly never clicked with that 5-man. Honestly, it didn't even look like Fnatic really ever clicked. Like Fnatic just seemed to kind of like get by, just cheating, winning the split every time somehow. I don't really know how, but like I feel like Riddle was a more complete team than Fnatic at the end, yeah. And maybe the only like actual team.
How do you think? It's going sort of a step forward a bit, but with Fnatic when they went to EU Masters then, and the whole thing happened with MagiFelix going off to Worlds in the middle of groups. Do you see them having any better chance with him? Because I remember we had Nico the Pico on afterwards. Obviously he would be very confident, but he was, basically saying if MagiFelix stayed, we would have definitely got out of the groups and would have gone on a good run. But
I think they would have gotten out of the group for sure, because just from their week 1 performance, you could see. I think it would have depended, because I wasn't that confident for them in the rest, but looking at how the Worlds meta shaped up, and Dan is Dan is, in my opinion, one of the like he's an LEC level jungler.
Yeah.
Like this guy is insanely good at the game. There are loads of people who like hate on Dan. It's usually like junglers on worse teams who don't understand the game to the level, so they don't even understand what he's doing. That's good. So I see a lot of people flaming him, saying like he just farms or whatever, but like they don't even understand what he's actually doing. That is making his decisions correct. But I think Dan's an insanely good jungler, and if they like, I'd have to go back and look at what they were like playing, but if they'd have got onto this like Nidda Graves style that was prominent at Worlds, Dan and Felix are a mid jungle that really can be the best mid jungle in EU Masters. I felt like there was other weaknesses on the Fnatic team in top and bot lane, but no team is without like holes, and I think for sure if they'd have hit on that style, they could have gone deep in the tournament. But I didn't. At least watching their gameplay in week 1, I remember thinking they'll make it out of the group, but I don't expect them to do any better than top 4. Like if they'd have made top 4, I thought that would have been an achievement. I expect them to lose earlier, but again with the caveat, I can't see their scrims. I can't see what they were thinking of playing, and and I've not got a good read on, like, I can't even remember what the tournament meta was for EU Masters. So depending on like all those factors and matchup stuff, so like that's kind of hard for me to analyze. But for sure, there's like a world in which they do really well at that tournament with Felix.
One thing I want to touch on, especially what you mentioned about MagiFelix there. There's been like that whole like stigma with him about people saying like because obviously he's like the solo queue god of having like accounts on every role in top 10 and whatnot. And then every time I see his name mentioned on Twitter, there's always someone will say like, oh yeah, but he's like bottle job basically, not
on stage issues.
Yeah, they say on stage or like in competitive and that. But then like I remember seeing that mentioned when he joined Fnatic, and before that I'd not really seen him play competitive anyway. And then since he's been with Fnatic have won like basically everything they've been in, nationally at least, like UKLC and I don't see any of and even one of them was on stage when they did the final in Twickenham. So like being someone that was on the team for some of those wins, did you ever notice anything, or do you think that's like an overdone thing? Because I literally, even today, I saw a tweet about it, and I'm just thinking it's like people that have seen it years ago and they just haven't watched any of his games, and they just still.
And even to add to that, like at EU Masters as well, like I'm pretty sure MagiFelix played offline in a couple of the EU Masters tournaments anyway when they reached the knockouts.
Well, so here's the thing. The one time I will say that I think. Would be the EU Masters were I played one game, which was 2019 spring.
Was it Leicester? Yeah. I think was it Leicester. I think
Leicester. There was one in 2019 spring, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say Felix underperformed, but my issue would be, I think everyone kind of choked because I wasn't playing. I was listening to comms, and I would say Tog, Armus, Matty, Felix, and Chikari all to some extent kind of choked that. Like the game they almost won against SK in that best of 3, Dan was essentially doing like if you say each person on the team has 20% responsibility to do, Dan was essentially doing like 90% of the team stuff. He was essentially like running everything and then doing like the extra stuff he shouldn't even need to do. Like he would say like, here's what we're doing, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing. And then he'd be like, have extra time to be like, guys, calm down, we've got this. Like we're in a goals lead. Like, we play this game in scrims like 100 times, we win 100 times. Like just take a deep breath, we've got this. And then someone would face like a bush and die. And like, because they were, because they were nervous because they were underperforming because of the pressure, I guess. But like to me, listening to that game, it's like Dan was essentially running like damage control. But like again, I can't really blame Felix for underperforming because it's not like he inted. He just
that's the thing. There's a difference between underperforming it, but like there's this perception that as soon as he like sees a stage, he just cowers, and it's like,
as soon as he opens up like the tournament client or something, it's just like his hands start shaking. And
I think it's just really overdone because people just love to tell stories like that, and like there's all the like random stuff about Felix that like I don't even know if it's true or not. Like I doubt it is. Where essentially people like to just play up on his personality because that it's just what people do. Like I think it's really overplayed. Like again, to me, watching that, it's like I feel like if I'd have been on that stage, I'd have choked, and 4 out of the 5 players did choke. So it's like, why are you picking on Felix when like that's like the least of the thing? Like, there's even the game he played in LEC where he got put in mid and Nemesis played ADC. That happened last year.
Which is a great debut, when you've got someone off role going into another lane.
Yeah, but like he was the only one that didn't int the game. Like his entire team ran it down. He's like the actual LEC players, and he played like fine in a fairly high stakes match. It's like obviously he's human and he feels pressure.
Yeah.
And yes, his solo queue performance is really, really, really high, and he has some really high highs as a player. But like, I don't know why this whole thing needs to be attributed to like he's choking or like. Or more so than like any normal player. I think it's like really overdone.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see him making the step up? Because we've seen, I think there's like the rumors of Dan going to EXCEL, so it looks like he's got his chance finally. Other than the like one Rift Rivals game, whatever it was before, but
yeah,
which everybody's going to mention. Everybody's going to mention that. They're going to be like, oh, but look at him at Rift Rivals. Like you can't compare it with Rift Rivals, right?
I mean, it's so annoying because it's like they put like Team Liquid was like that was the year Team Liquid went to like MSI finals, beating SKT. It's like in his first ever game. Like I mean, again, I think Dan's a really good player, but like his first ever game, he was like left in a really bad situation in game, and he's playing against like Double Lift, COD JJ. Like these are like world class. Like COD JJ is like one of the best supporters in the world. Like what is this discussion? Like he had one iffy game on Jarvan where like he fell behind. It's like of course he's gonna have an iffy game. He fell behind on Jarvan. Like that's just the reality of the situation. And I doubt it was like probably like again I don't know Dan like again at the level I've played with him, he's really confident and he's a team leader. But maybe in that game I don't know how he was used, but like maybe he was being told where to go and he kind of made some decisions that he wouldn't have made in a normal situation, which is his first game like against like a really I know the whole situation just seems like people are going to bring that one game up and it's going to annoy me reading the comments. It's just like you don't see like the reason Dan is getting the chances he's getting is because he's consistently a really, really high level jungler and he understands the game to such the level that he does. Like that's what you're not seeing like day in day out, him being the team leader, him like in-game leading, shot calling, leading the plans, being the focal point for the team, defining how it plays, performing his own role to a high level, helping people outside of the game, that he's been doing for like 8 years, not really getting the shot he deserves. So people are going to bring that up, but it's really unjustified. Like Dan is an excellent player, by far the best teammate I've ever had, and he's the kind of player I aspire to be because I just don't see any. There's nothing like when I have Dan, there was no point where you're like, like he's got all this good stuff, but like I wish he didn't do this, or like there's this bad aspect. It's like his entire like just who he is as a player is like the perfect teammate as far as I'm concerned. So like yeah, I have nothing but praise to say about Dan.
What do you make of that like the rumored EXCEL lineup then? What do you think they'll how well do you think they'll do? So for anyone that doesn't know, it's like I think it's still Cry's top, and then they're getting Dan jungle, Checolad mid, and then still Patrick and Torre bot. What do you make of that team?
I'm not sure because like the thing with the game right now is like individual level is not the key factor. How you work as a 5-man is. I think Patrick's insane. Like this guy's really good. I think Tor is good. He's a like high quality support. Checolad, honestly, I haven't watched him recently, but my opinion of him is not. I wouldn't say he's bad. Like he's definitely a top level National League player, but I feel like he's really passive. If I'm remembering, like I might be getting confused with another Polish mid laner, but my opinion of Checolad, at least in my head, is he's really passive, and I think Dan works a lot better with an aggressive mid laner. But
what about an aggressive top laner? Because that's what Cry's is essentially.
Yeah, I mean the issue just is like the game, like League of Legends, just does not work. Like top is just not as important as mid. Like mid is just the most important. Like it's the center of the map. It's always going to be the most important lane. But like like maybe Checolad, if he heard me say that, would be like, this guy's stupid, doesn't know what he's talking about. But, at the very least, like individual talent wise, like they've got the bot lane's really solid. I think Dan deserves this shot, and I hope he proves it and shows like that he's at that level as well. Cries, I think he's played the one split now. I think stylistically, again, like XL kind of didn't play towards him the way they should have. Like I don't think they were getting the most out of Cries. He definitely can play in LEC, I think, and look good. So it's just about if this team is the right environment for Cries, and I'm guessing with the changes they've made, they'll be trying to achieve that. Checolad's the one that I'm unsure on, but at the end of the day, it's EU. So Checolad, like it's EU, and Checolad's a mid laner who's been playing at the top of like EU Masters level for a while now. So probably he'll step in and be probably exceed my expectations. But that would be the question mark for me. Is I feel like there's better players they could have gotten, but again, if this is what makes Cries operate better, then I'm all for it. And Checolad also might just be a lot better than I personally think, because I'm no judge of mid lane talent, really.
Fair enough. Kind of on a bit of a tangent there, but just one thing I want to bring it back on the NLC that we were talking about before. What do you just make of the league in general, like having been in around since it was like there was obviously like UK Premiership and that before, and then UKLC. Now we've got this kind of joint league. What do you see? Did you think the overall level of the league went up at all? Because as viewers, it kind of, for us, it looked like it did. To be fair, like the talent pool was obviously a lot bigger. Of, the Danish players, everything. So, yeah, how did you see the league in general, just even as an outsider?
Yeah, I mean the level definitely went up. Like the bottom teams, just the quality of the player went up. Even if the quality of like the team play didn't go up, again, like I think the issue with the UK is there is just this real big. There's like the really good players and the good players, and there's just like a massive drop off because of just like the population. And obviously, when you add like 5-6 new countries to eligible non-imports, it really spikes up the quality, because obviously, even if you only add, let's say, 4 or 5 new elite level players, you enable 2 or 3 teams that would previously have been middle of the pack to make that step up. And again, like it ripples down the whole ladder, which I think is why it was a lot more competitive. I don't think the quality was that high in terms of gameplay. Again, like I think most of the teams were good players with issues, but I'm sure from a spectator standpoint, the things you see in game mechanically will go a step up, and you'll have a lot less complete, like one-sided games like you used to way back when in the UK League.
Yeah.
So I definitely think the quality's improved over time. It's had its ups and downs for sure. Like by my money, 2017 summer was probably the best split UK's ever had in terms of quality, relative for the time. But for sure, it's going up. Like the trend is up over time.
Yeah.
Do you think that then this will kind of, because there's 2 sides of the arguments in terms of UK talent in general. Do you think that this will kind of, the way that I look at it is I think that it will make the UK talent who's really good better, but then it could also limit like okay players because they might not get a chance to even develop in the top divisions. I just want to know what your stance is with kind of UK players.
I'll be honest. I think the fact that we had 4 divisions for UK this last split gone, actually, I think that's incredible. Like I think that's what actually matters about developing talent is it doesn't really matter where you start, just having the opportunity to jump in and try it, like giving players between like mid diamond and challenger, like, because even if you're challenger in solo queue, unless you're really good, if you've never played competitive before, you're not going to get a team offer that's good. You're going to have to play with players way below you individually just to get a taste of what it's like. And just having places where these players can come and learn is, I think, what makes EU have such a large talent pool. It's not really about like the competition. It's just playing 6 months with a team, understanding how like getting into the schedule of like, this is what scrims are, like this is how review is done, this is how I'm supposed to act towards my teammates, this is what I need to communicate in game. Some players really struggle with just playing and talking, so having a place where you have to practice that is really good as well. So I think for okay or up and coming players, like as long as we still have the feeder leagues, it should be really fine. The issue with the top UK talent is I don't know why, but I feel like in the NLC, I mean, like just using myself as an example, I got very, very, very few offers from NLC teams. and like again, like obviously this is gonna sound like cocky when I say it, but like I feel like there was just a lot of Nordic bias from the Nordic orgs of taking players who were worse than some of the UK free agents, but just were Nordic. So like I think there was a lot of Nordic supports who were picked up who are not bad by any means, but I don't understand why like for example I didn't even get a trial against these players when at least to me and to a lot of other people in the scene that I've spoken to, they would like, they'd say like, oh, haven't, I'd be speaking in the offseason and be like, oh, haven't you got a trial from this team? They've signed this guy. And I'd be like, no, they didn't even trial me. And he'd be like, but you're clearly better than that guy, and obviously these are my friends and people I speak to. So that there's an element of bias in, but like the Nordic orgs like really seem to just not bother at all with UK players, like not even give them a first shot, which is one thing because at the end of the day, like it's not like there's very few UK players in the league, but they're on the teams that win. So it's not like the UK players are bad. Like Fnatic has Matty and Dan. XL had Deadly Kasing.
Tricked had Soft as well.
Yeah,
Tricked performed very well as well.
The UK players were all on like the top 4 teams. All apart from like me, I think there was like 1 or 2 others who were on like the bottom teams. But I can't even remember. Like, honestly,
like,
like, I feel like
was on Nordavind, but they weren't exactly bad.
I mean, I'd say Nordavind was honestly one of the teams that should have been vying for top. Like again, it was just it just seemed like a lot of teams had like really meh seasons for what they should have accomplished. But yeah, I think like Nolte was like the lowest placing UK player, and they came like I think 4th in playoffs.
Munster was the only other team with any.
Oh yeah, Munster had UK talent,
it's like I saw this like debate on Twitter, and I can't remember who said it, but someone said something about this, like, oh yeah, like here's the amount of teams, here's the amount of players, like how embarrassing for the UK. I was saying like, oh, there's only like 10 UK players out of a potential like 80. How embarrassing when like, and I just looked at it, I was like, well, you've got Shikari, Nolte, Soft, like Deadly, Kasing, Matty, and I just said, and Dan. It's like Dan's like the best jungler in the tournament. Kasing's like the best support in the tournament probably. Matty and Deadly are 2 of the 3 by far best AD carries. Like so, like it just doesn't make any sense to me that people are like criticizing the UK players. It just seems like for some reason there's this really weird disconnect where like most orgs just won't give the actual good UK players a chance. Like the ones that are on the parity, just because I think there's so much more options in the Nordic players. And the issue is players like to play with other players. Like the orgs don't often make the choices of the roster. It's usually the players. So like if you've got like 4 Nordic players and they say, oh, here's like 3 supports you can pick, and I'm one of them, and like there's some other Grandmaster Challenger supports who are Nordic, it doesn't really matter to those players. Like they're just gonna pick who they want to play with, and again they're gonna be biased towards that player. And they might think I'm bad and that this player's better than me, but like to me it feels really weird that like I didn't get a even chance to trial for a lot of these teams. Like that feels really I'm not going to say unfair because that's the way esports is. Like sometimes you get lucky, and like being a UK resident has helped me in the past. Like I don't think I would have gotten on Fnatic if I wasn't a UK resident. That helps me a lot. But this last off season, being a UK resident feels like it's like being a UK player really feels like it's dropped in quality.
Prosfair, there. I think we
you can't have like. Oh, where did I cut out?
I think you're back.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there you go. We're all back now.
But yeah, like being a UK resident is like a black mark as far as I'm concerned. Like no one wants to import you now that you can't just have a gaming house and buy who you want. High quality local residents are like the thing you need, and UK residency isn't valuable because again it plays in the NLC, of which there's like 7 countries of residency. So it's like a really diluted value anyway. And the 2 teams that actually have the power to import and build strong rosters, Fnatic and XL, kind of like already have their roster set in stone and have like XL, for example, have had Taxa and Sendo for ages. They count as UK at this point. Like, so that would be my take on it. Is like, I don't think it's a problem, but I do feel like the Nordic orgs have a bias towards Nordic players that shouldn't be there.
I do think the interesting thing is that like I can get the argument though that they are Nordic organizations, and so they'll want to invest kind of in Nordic players from a brand perspective. And then you actually look at the teams which came from the UK scene. 2 of them are academy teams who are, yes, they're kind of UK, but they're also kind of a development system anyway. So they won't be looking for an all British roster kind of thing. So you've already knocked 2 teams out who are from the UK scene who wouldn't be necessarily looking at just UK talent, but we'll be looking at all talent.
Yeah.
You've got the Nordic rosters, and so it does limit the pool of actually who's the British rosters looking to bring in British players. And then you also, like you said, you bring in, like, I'm going to preface this by saying that I bloody love Wendelbo. I think Wendelbo was great. Like, but Wendelbo was in that team because obviously it was a team of players who wanted to play together, you know, like in that Riddle side. And so, and then same with Godsent, probably with Pedersen as well. It was a group of 5 players who wanted to play together. And so it doesn't make any sense for them to actually change that and bring someone else in when that's the 5 players who kind of want from a harmony perspective. So there are loads of little intricacies. I do actually agree with you, though, with like, you look at the other divisions, and I think if you're a good enough player, you'll get your opportunity. It's just those opportunities might not be that much. But if you've got the quality to show it, if you're so good, then I feel like you are eventually going to get into that league at some point anyway. Because right now, I think especially brands are like organizations are looking at it from a branding perspective with it being a new league. But as kind of hopefully this league develops, like it becomes more about the organization and not the brand of the country you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's this really big gap. Like at a certain level, you can get in, like, let's say like Div 2 UK, like at UKLC. That's quite easy if you're like even just like master tier, let's say, like that's, which I think is fine. But then there's like this big gap between like that and being one of the best in your role, not just in the UK but also in the Nordics, that you need to get all the way to even get a spot on an NLC team. Like that's what I find weird is like for UK players, it seems like it's really hard to get that step up to NLC. And you essentially have to go from being a beginner in your role to one of the best, again, not just in the UK, but in the UK and the Nordics, to even get like a chance of getting out there. It just seems really weird to me and like quite perverse.
Then who were you maybe surprised not to see in the NLC then, out of like the UK players? Who do you think would have done a job in there that didn't make it?
I think Yusa should have been in, but Yusa went to a different league, so I don't know if that was kind of
I remember him tweeting at the time like about something falling through as well, and like, he needed a team at the last minute. So I wonder if maybe he was supposed to be somewhere and that didn't happen. Yeah, so I don't know.
But then we've also got to take into account that there are some UK players who are in Spain or are in some of the top ERLs anyway. So would they even want to? Unless it's for like a Fnatic or an XL or based in academy roster, would they even want to like jump over at that point?
Yeah, I mean it would be like Dragdar, Yusa, Kerberos, but Kerberos was playing on UOL.
Like Kerberos was the main example I was thinking. I don't think Kerberos got URL. I would have thought that he would have had offers in the NLC, definitely. But when you've got URL, who's already a big organization, and even though it's not an academy, it's still a recognized organization. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, actually, I wouldn't say there's that many examples of players where I look at and I think like this guy should have been playing. Like I mean, like again, it's egotistical to say like I think I would be the best example. It's like, and again, like, I don't mind not playing. It's just the fact that I didn't even get like the chance to like. I think like look at Wendelbo, you look at Pedersen, you look at got who Nordavind support now. Bebop, PlayStation. Like I don't think I'm worse than any of these. Like at least for me, I think I'm significantly better than these 4 players. But like I'm obviously gonna say that. But I didn't even get the chance to try out against these guys or try out with these teams. It's just like for sure like this is one of these things, right? Like some players just from solo queue are gonna have different perceptions. So there are for sure players who think that like they might like listen to a clip of me saying this now and go, that guy's way better than Prosfair. But I don't know if there's anyone who thinks that there's no parity between me 4 and between those 4 and me, to the point where like you might as well trial me when I'm one of like the at least in my opinion strongest the NLC. and people don't even want to like bother like replying to a message from me or sending me a message in the first place, just seems like really weird. And I feel like maybe like that's just like again like, I don't know like I don't know if that's like maybe Curb went to UOL and declined some offers, but I kind of get the feeling like Curb and Yusa would have been in a like it's like a weird spot where like they're already so established. Like they should be getting a lot of trials and being able to like pick the team they want or at least have a good choice or a good selection. But it just feels like the Nordic bias is so strong that like you don't even get this chance. And then you've got like the really, really established players who just kind of get on teams automatically.
Would you not say that like in your case with support, would you not think that support is the most dictated by kind of a duo kind of package? Like you look at kind of mid lane, you look at jungle, you look at top, and you feel like that sometimes to me feels like that's an organization's choice. Where sometimes whether it's the support or the ADC, it's most of the time feels like it's a package deal with both of them. Do you not think that there's a worry sometimes, particularly with bot lane?
I mean, I know what you mean, but I just don't like. I don't agree with the concept really. Like maybe if you've got a really good bot lane coming to you as an org and saying it's both of us or neither of us. Maybe you know like you have a support or an AD you're trialing that's a bit better than one of them, but then the gap in the other role is so big you think, well, I'll take the duo. But like, did that happen in all again? Did that happen in all for every NLC team? I don't think so. I mean, maybe it did, but like, are all of the ADs for those teams like? I don't think that's the situation. It's just like the players are just the Nordic players. They're building a roster with the org. The org's looking at Nordic players. Like, it's just like they don't even consider like looking at the UK players at all, right? Like, it's not even a consideration. Which is where I think the issue is. It's like unless the UK player is so good that it's like you'd be stupid to not go and get this guy. They're so good they could get exported to any region. Unless you're already that good, no one's going to look at you. And at that point, what's the value of your residency if no one's going to look at you until you can go to any region anyway? Like that's how it feels to me from my personal experience and just speaking to people. And maybe that was just last split and it's a one-off because the orgs are building their first rosters. Again, like what
I
team
think ENCE was the biggest one, and I think even we had someone from ENCE on, and they were saying that they went for the whole was it Finnish? I think it was Finnish, the whole Finnish roster.
Yeah.
And that was because it's a Finnish organization. The roster itself is a good overall solid roster, but it was very much came across that this is to perform well, but also as a branding kind of we are the Finnish org, you know, we're a Finnish organization through.
Exactly right. It's not like they built the roster to lose, but you can't say they were clearly their goal is not we are going to try and win #1 spot, because the odds of the best player that you trialed in every role, even like being all from the same country, is like as astronomical. Like this didn't happen. You didn't go, we're going to pick the best players in each role and try and win. You went, we're going to pick the best players we can from Finland, which still got them an okay roster. But like, this is what I mean is like that it didn't really matter how good any of the UK or Danish or Swedish or Finnish no, it's a Finnish roster, right? Essentially, I'm getting on myself. It doesn't matter how good any of the other supports, ADs, jungles, mids, tops in those roles were. That's 5 slots that are essentially just taken by like the best Finnish players, and they're residents, and that's within the prerogative to do, right? Like you don't need to you don't need to compete in a league as an org to win the league. That's not necessarily what you're trying to do, but I bet like a little bit of that trickled down to every team. I mean, I've said it like 3 times now, but like that's what I feel happened with the Nordic teams.
But yeah, like you say though, if it's you know at least easier for them to get in like UKLC and that for now, it could even be that once we've got through a few splits and we see some of that talent in the UKLC, then you know if they do well at TLEA Masters, then people probably maybe the orgs do wake up a bit more to realise that they could be taking extra players that they're not particularly thinking of. Or
I swear though, if I see in like next split, like we're coming into spring or summer, and it's like right, we're gonna rejig the system. It is now UKLC 5 or something like that. I'm gonna be like, there needs to be consistency. This needs to be that if you're gonna pick this model, stick with this model, stick with this tier system, which I actually think is a really smart system, and see how it works. Because I'm sick and tired of having a different. I'm glad we never called this podcast, by the way, like the UKLC podcast or anything like that, because it would literally change every season with the way it's been going.
Yeah.
So it's just, I just hope that they stick to this, see what the results is, and just tweak it. They don't need to revamp anything, I think.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion, honestly. Like at this point, I'm so used to it changing that it's like whatever, and I'm not really a fan of the current format.
Yeah, to be fair,
would you prefer the cups again, the weekly cup tournaments?
That's not a funny joke.
I was, to be
None of
fair,
that.
we were well, that's a good transition to the Fall Open then, because speaking of cups, obviously we used to have like the Forge of Champions every now and then as well, which being, I don't know if maybe it's because it's like we're English football fans and the whole FA Cup thing. You know, we like a good cup competition, which is not many of in League of Legends. It is more leagues and splits.
This is not a cup though. This is a cup in a cup. That's like
True.
It's 2 cups.
Exactly. Well, even better then. So, what were your thoughts, just first of all, on there being some sort of cup like this? Were you someone that was a fan of Forge of Champions before? Because as viewers, we really liked it, but then when we spoke to people, especially more like on org management side, they perhaps didn't seem to like it too much because they had to, maybe sometimes hold on to rosters for longer than they perhaps wanted to, or they maybe have to build a roster for a couple of weeks. What were your thoughts on these like smaller kind of cup things as a player?
Well, the NLC Open I think it's good. Like, it's a good format. Like, it's a well-run tournament. Like, they have GSL brackets into a playoff. Like, this is perfect. Like, this is how Worlds should be done. Like, better format than Worlds. Like, incredible. Like, well done. Yeah, I agree. There's not enough. Like, I think it provides something for players to play in the. I mean, we didn't used to have like a winter season. And I've never played in one before, so like this is a bit new to me. But I think it's good. My main issue with it is it's very like there's not very much incentive for good players to play in it because the monetary returns were not that high, and it seems like orgs don't normally contract play, at least in the UK, because we've never had a winter split before. Orgs don't normally contract people for this time, so it was like all of the players are like, okay, you're asking me for like 2 extra months work. I can't go to EU Masters. Like, this doesn't do anything. Like, no one's really gonna like change their opinion of me. Like, this isn't really like, I've just played a full split. Like, I've played a full year. Like, what does it, like, from a player perspective, it's like, if the org needs to re-salary them, and the org's probably not going to want to spend a lot on that because the org is like, well, again, even if we win this, it's not like we get to go to EU Masters or anything. Mm-hmm. It felt to me like a lot, like, for example, I know personally from speaking to a lot of the players who were on teams that played in the NLC, and then they stepped down between now and then, and they all had to rebuild rosters. Is like the players just like, even if I win, I get like it's not enough justification for like 2.5 months extra scrimming and work. Mm-hmm. On the off chance I even come first, it's barely worth it. And like, being realistic, that there's no incentive to play for the good players, which is why I felt like it feels like Barrage are probably going to just wipe the tournament, because all the other teams, like, the good players are just like, yeah, I can't be bothered playing in this. Like, there's no reason for me to. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't going to do it at first. Like, I was essentially turning down every offer, and then I essentially did it because I thought, well, if I come first, it's a decent chunk of money, and Christmas is coming up. Like, that was literally it for me. Is like, for the first time I played for like monetary reasons. Like, normally I don't like money is like the lower end. As long as I'm supporting myself, I'm kind of happy. Mm-hmm. And I play for the competition and for winning and the roster and all that kind of stuff. So this, like, for me, this was the first time where I was like, again, just like the incentive for like most players, I feel like just isn't there with the tournament. And so especially with the academy teams not in it, the quality just kind of like dropped. Mm-hmm. And that's like, the format's great, and I think it's good that it's there, but they need to figure out a way to make it so that like orgs want to sign players for this, or players want to play in this, because at least right now it seems like none of the players who are actually good enough who think like oh, I'd just win it if I played in it, so what's the point, right? Like, it's not fun, it's not engaging, it's not a challenge. Mm-hmm. And then once those players leave, like, you're just left with like the mid-tier players who kind of think like, oh, that's not universal. Like, I'm not blaming everyone who played in the tournament, but like, at least to me, it feels like a lot of the really good players just don't see the point. Like, they'd rather just play solo queue for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got some teams as well who kind of just essentially ran it back. So whether that be they just all decided, yeah, let's do it, or the Riddle/Barrage roster basically probably just doing it because they just want to do it essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it was anything where it was like I don't think it was anything like this is going to kind of add anything to us, but it'd be something fun to do. And I think that if you can get those players who is like, oh, it's something fun to do, which I think is good with an off-season tournament to have that kind of a little bit more of a relaxed nature anyway. But if you can actually get a good incentive as well, then that does provide things. I agree. I think the foundation is there. I do think it will get better again. If they do it year on year, I think it will get better year on year and more people will want to do it.
If you look at the other regions, you've got like the Iberian Cup, you've got the like German Winter Tournament. France has one as well, but the thing with those regions is they have large fan bases that already successfully like have a lot of viewers who are from the language who, I mean, it's the whole problem of like trying to monetize or like make successful the UK stream is people just don't want to watch because there's other UK English content. Like you can go watch the Worlds in English. Why would you watch NLC Open? But if you want German or French or Spanish content, this is the best you've got. And the players actually get large followings there, and so I think it's worth for them to play. And again, because of all that, the teams kind of actually like because it's set in the team's salary players for like the full year. So again, the player actually has like a reason. Like it's just like, oh yeah, this is part of what I signed on for at the start of the year was like 2 splits in the Winter Cup. Whereas for UK players, again, it's like people didn't sign on for this. And there's no like incentive to play really for anyone. Like it doesn't really engage anyone.
I think eventually, like if this is an annual thing, and I'd hope the NLC kind of alerts basically straight after this, or even now to the organisation saying, look, we are going to do this annually. This just wasn't just a one-off. That does then help the organisation to put that in contracts as well. So we could have kind of this annual thing, knowing that there is going to be something there, and maybe because like they kind of expected maybe like not having the same rosters or maybe not the same quality, that's why the monetary value isn't as much. Where if they do this next year, they might say, right, we're going to do this. This is going to be the prize money, for example, or around this area, and so now organizations have that option to kind of solidify these players for a period of time.
So I'm pretty sure Oh, yeah, go ahead.
It's just a bit weird that like the academy teams and Riddle, like the top 4 teams from the regular season weren't in it. That's like so weird to me. Like none of the other regions do that. Like
no, Riddle were in it, but Riddle was just a completely different roster.
Yeah. Because I was going to say,
Riddle were in it too.
I don't know if it may be that they because the cup was arranged later on, because I think Riddle would even like let that roster go so they could do a different roster.
Because they had to do a different
tournament. Yeah. And then they lost the roster from that, and then they didn't get it back. So maybe if they knew they were doing the Fall Open the whole time, they might have just done an extra length of the contract.
It's weird. I think the idea of it is good and the basis is there, but right now there's no incentive for good players to want to play in it, as far as I can tell. And I don't even think I think a lot of the orgs don't really want to have to contract rosters for 2 extra months to play in it either.
I think the only one which I actually see, and I don't know if you then want to kind of segue this into the group, it is NVision. I thought NVision, which I actually was like, because it's a completely different roster essentially than what they had in the UKLC, and I really enjoyed kind of like the ambition that that NVision, showed, and obviously they ended up winning the group, didn't they? They won Group A because of that.
Yeah, and like you say, Tom, good transition then. So, talking of NVision in particular, and going into maybe some of our predictions we had. So, for those who watched last week, we did predict, or try our best to predict who would get out of each group. And Tom, you actually smashed this group. You got both of them. You said ENCE and NVision.
I said NVision is a sleeper. I mean, granted, right? I'm going to correct this. I did think Music was playing in the Prime League. Actually, it is the Prime League, but it's the Prime League 2nd Division. But still, like, I think the one player I was impressed with the most was Kadiva. He was literally the only player, I think, in that entire roster analysis we did, where I was like, I'm unsure about this player. I don't particularly know too much about him, but I think he absolutely smashed that group and he's looking like a really, really good player. I said this to you as well. Like, I don't think that this is a roster which is going to stay in the UKLC. Like, I think generally, I think NVision have done some wonderful work of collecting these players. They've kind of given them a showcase, and I do think that NVision, out of all of them, apart from Barrage, probably looks the strongest out of the lot.
Yeah, and it was a bit weird to see ENCE, I think, not struggle when they obviously didn't get out of the group, because when you're coming into coming off the back of the summer split where they were like we mentioned earlier, they weren't like a top team, but they weren't exactly a bad team, and then they've obviously stuck together. So you would have thought that the extra work they had and the extra time
they did get through in the end. So they beat Riddle in the end, didn't they?
Oh right, they did, of course. Yeah, I'm literally rubbish.
But I think that helped a lot. I think you actually look at ENCE and you think, right, this is a run it back roster. ENCE, for me, knowing the organization just outside of League of Legends, they may have even been one of the few rosters that's been like, right, we're going to keep this for maybe even longer than the split itself, just with the organization, what I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously when this tournament came, I think they were probably one of the least affected orgs in terms of the roster. And I think it showed. It wasn't easy for ENCE. Obviously they were 2-1, 2-1, but I think they looked comfortable and, could go far, I think. Possibly. However, I have just seen who they're against. Oh yeah, I think they could go far.
They're in the nicer side of the bracket, I think.
They are in the nicer side.
What do you make of Group A then, Prosfair? Is there anyone that stood out, positive or negative?
Do you have a place that links to the groups? Because I'm on Wikipedia and there's just no good graphic.
Yeah, it's laid out really weird.
It's laid out like it's one big tournament. Gamepedia.
Go on. Gamepedia is it's not flaming. It's by far for me the superior Wikipedia ripoff.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually on Gamepedia, by the way, and it's still laid out terribly.
Oh, so if you go to
they're like the exact same thing, by the way. So.
Oh, never mind.
Gamepedia, whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, it's just a graphic because I don't know. Like, I don't bother to remember what teams are in each group. Like, I just.
I think if you go into results, it will show the group stages, and it's like the little tournament brackets, and then it's just the two at the end on round 2.
It's not the clearest thing to look at.
No, it's not. Because so it was NVision and ENCE in the end who ended up going through.
It was Riddle, NVision, ENCE, and XY.
Yeah.
So what did I think? I mean, I think XY losing was pretty expected.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, back to our earlier conversation, if you've got a team that's essentially all built from one country, it's probably not that likely to be optimal. Especially Iceland, which has a particularly small population. Like, of all the Nordic and the UK, I think they probably have like the lowest talent base.
And then they did have one UK resident in Jamsey as well. So at least they tried a little bit. They were one of the I think it was the named 6 UK residents who were in the tournament.
No, there was me, Sof, and Jamsey. That was it.
Oh Jesus!
About 4 UK people. That was
Do you
that
know
was
what?
it.
Have you seen? Is that
I have no idea who this guy is. I'll be brutally honest.
Fair enough. Because I think it was from what I think it's literally the first competitive experience he's had from what we can tell, and just kind of out of nowhere.
He's a jungler, right? Let's have a look for him on. I mean, he's not on LoL Pros at all, so I don't even know what elo this guy is. But I have no idea who this player is. So he's not on my radar. But that happens a lot, that someone comes up and they kind of come out of nowhere. But I'd say this entire XY Esports team, I haven't heard of a single one of the players before. So at least to me, seeing them lose is expected. The whole ENCE, Riddle, NVision thing was a lot more hard to call.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's hard to say. What would I have actually expected before? Because I think I would have expected ENCE to go out. I think some of their players are really, really good. But I probably would have said Riddle over NVision, to be honest. But NVision topped the group, so. Yeah, I guess I'm just a bit. I'm kind of probably as surprised as you that like NVision did so well. Because I probably would have had it as ENCE and then NVision or Riddle getting out.
I think NVision was the biggest difference that me and Lee had in the tier list.
Yeah.
I had him I think at like A tier, and I think you had him at D.
I think so, D. Yeah,
So-
I don't want to talk about my tier list anymore than we have to be honest, Tom. Yeah, and it's no surprise. Out of the 8 teams to go through, I got 4 out of 8. So ENCE was my 1 in Group A, and we'll see I got 1 right in each other group. But to be fair, Tom, you got this group perfect, and then every other group you got 1 out of 2 as well. So
Exactly, yeah.
only 1 better, but yeah. Well, 50%. I'm going glass half full, at least.
No, I thought, like I said, I think the thing with NVision is, for me, obviously I'm a lot more used to watching ENCE, obviously with them being in the NLC. So NVision was one of those where I kind of looked at the players a little bit individually. I rate Icebreaker as a player. I just feel like he's been one of those players, not like Kerberos, but I feel like sometimes he's been limited with the team which he's been in sometimes. And then it was kind of how does Cadaver, how does he perform when I didn't really know? And he ended up being, like I said, really, really good for ENCE. So it kind of, the known entities, which I knew, I thought performed well. And then the unknown entities, I think, performed better than I expected. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how it kind of worked out for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly sold on the Riddle team, but I don't think it was a bad team at all. It did feel like I said, the rumors were that, they obviously had to change the roster, and so they had to go with that, and it just felt it felt weaker than what you'd expect, but you can't really do anything with a fall tournament like that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's maybe move on to Group B then. In Group B, we both.
Oh, if this is our analysis of Group A, just you wait to Group B, because I still don't know half of these teams in Group B.
Yeah, well, we both had Cova to get out of the group, and I think we talked about them. That we'd expect they'd be the strongest team, and they literally went 0-2.
No, I had Viking in A. I had Viking.
Oh, right, fair enough. Well, we had them as one of the strongest teams. I had them as the strongest team, and then they didn't. I don't think they lost both series in a row. And crashed out. And to be fair, Viking was one I didn't really know too much on. I think I had UNIQ to go through. That's the 1 out of 2 that I got. But yeah, it was kind of a group where we kind of thought it was probably the easiest out of the groups. If you look at like just the general level, is that something you'd agree with then, Prosfair? I saw you a little nod.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty easy group to me. I think we probably would have made out of this group in first, although we did play pretty bad, so I can't really talk. Like we played pretty awful, but I think this group is very, very easy.
Do you think there's any way they could have seeded it at all? Because we talked about it a bit last week, where obviously it's clear that some groups were stronger than others, but then obviously it being a tournament where most of the teams are brand new rosters, it's going to be awkward to try and do some sort of seeding anyway. But do you see any way they could have maybe done it differently?
I mean, I don't know. The thing is, like, there's no way to seed that's not just like looking at players and like you essentially need a panel of people who can make an educated decision. Maybe you can give people points off like recent performances in national leagues, like let's say you played spring and summer split and you came this position in UK and this position in France, like you get X points and you add a roster's points up or something like that off achievements maybe. Like that might be one way to do it. You need like an objective system so you can do it fairly.
I think the best way was to do it randomly, because then it kind of eliminates all blame. I think if there was kind of like here's the 2 teams, but then we look at Riddle, for example. Riddle, for example, could have been a pool 1 side, but you probably then go off actually, no offense to Riddle, but with the quality of roster compared to what it was prior, you wouldn't probably class them as a pool 1 side. And
but this is why for this I think it makes more sense to do it off players.
Yeah.
Like maybe in future, if teams are actually going to stick with their rosters, it makes more sense to do it off the org. But I think having no seeding, if you go to the trouble of having such a like rigorous bracket system into the tournament with double LM, not seeding into that is like such a critical failure, because you've gone like you've done all the hard work of like having the format be essentially like, if you seed the teams in properly, the top 8 teams should actually be 1 to 8, the best 8 teams in the tournament in that
Okay,
order. But then you have massively lopsided groups, and it completely derails everything up until essentially like the finals or the semis. So essentially, once we're at the semi-finals, it should even out. But you essentially kill the entire first group of the bracket stage and just have. Again, there's going to be some really bad matches just because of like one team is first from a hard group, one team is second from a really easy group. That's going to be like lower quality than some of the group stage play.
Yeah. Were there any of the out of either UNIQ then or Viking that did maybe take you by surprise and you thought were maybe better than you expected?
It's hard to say because from Kova and PK, I expected literally nothing. And from UNIQ, I thought just look like it's like I recognize the players on UNIQ, and I think some of them are like decent, and then I recognize some of the players on Viking and think they are okay, and then I literally don't recognize anyone from the other two teams, and that's essentially what as a player, that's what my decision is going to be based off of, like known quantities, and I just feel like it's very hard in such a low quality group. It's very hard to see anything because like even if like UNIQ could have stomped every game in like 20 minutes, I would have been like, yeah, that's honestly not a surprise.
Fair enough. I guess we'll see in the knockouts then.
I did think that if there was like a standout player, I did think MTest was quite good. I actually like watching him play. He was one of the few players I kind of looked at and thought, okay, you know what? Like there's a good like quality player in there, and like to be fair, we never know. Like just because there's this perception of this being a weak group, it could come to playoffs, for example, and they could win the next game, and that could be a shock. And then your perception actually of what the group was could change in the sense of actually were these two teams were actually good teams and have gone far, and it was just two bad teams there. Yeah.
That's true. Like it can change depending, but like that thing is like MTest is like the one player that I think is good in that group. Like he's the one player that I look at and I think like of these 20 players, like do I think they're of like a high quality for like a EU regional league? And like MTest is like at least from my rating of every player in that group, MTest is here, and even the second player is like here. So like that thing is like you said that was a surprise, but like to me that was like the least surprise. Like I would expect MTest to 1v9 every game he plays in this group comfortably.
Fair enough. Maybe if you look at Group C then, and Group C is where we've got probably the clear tournament favourites. I'd imagine in Barrage, and we actually both had Barrage and M&M getting out because I thought on paper M&M looked decent. It was like half of the roster that was actually good towards the end of summer, but then that didn't really come to fruition. They were another side that I think they lost both games and crashed out, and it was Absolved in the end that got through, which probably would have been, I think, one of the fewer ones that we'd expected. It was kind of even a Singularity we didn't expect. But
I am absolutely hitting myself with the fact that for the entire tier list, I was like, oh, there must be a reason why they've kept takes at only 35 and got them onto Evolved. Like it's like maybe there's something there which we're not seeing. And I was praising Absolved so much for that move, and then I was like, oh, but probably M&M's going to get it. And I just wish I stuck to my guns because I think that Absolved, I think you look at Take Set and only 35, and I think they performed really, really well as that bot lane duo. Obviously, they lost to Singularity first and then beat them again, which I love because it was this storyline of, like Singularity thought they had then the better bot lane after dropping Take Set and only 35, just so then when it actually mattered for that duo to do something and get through in the losers bracket. So it was nice to actually see kind of a surprise with Absolved as a whole. M&M though was surprising, especially when I saw the first game against Barrage, because like look, Barrage, they are probably going to win this tournament if we're being honest, but I don't think they actually looked as comfortable, especially in that first game against M&M, in that first series against M&M, as what I'd expected them to do. And that really then made me think that M&M actually felt a lot better and played a lot better than what I expected. And then they ended up losing to Absolved in the losers bracket. So I was like, well, what's going to happen here? So my kind of tier list in this group, despite only one team I didn't think making it out, Like, it actually changed throughout this entire mini bracket, and in the end, I think Absolve really did deserve to get through.
I think Absolve's a good team.
Yeah, definitely. It could be with Barrage. You say that they didn't look that good out of the blocks. They're probably like just woken up from the hibernation after that mad run of games. They just still have to get back into the swing of it. But
I think when you're tournament favourite, it's hard to come out the gate swinging in groups. Like until your back's against the wall, it's hard to get the motivation going. Because again, everyone, even they themselves, probably think they should win this tournament.
And to be fair, the biggest test really that they should get in the whole tournament, we'll come on to it maybe a bit more in a minute, is the next knockout game they've got. Is probably their closest rivals on paper, at least. Let's maybe move on to those rivals then in Group D. So the team I'm talking about there, obviously being Tricked, who themselves were, I think I had them. Well, yeah, I had them as like the second favourites for the tournament, but they didn't exactly make it easy for themselves. They did lose to Nordavind White first, before beating yourselves, and then beating Nordavind White again. So like another one where they, a revenge bracket, if you like. What was the group like playing in then? Do you feel like the two strongest teams got through? Because Dusty was one where I don't think we really expected. I wouldn't say we didn't expect too much because they've got.
We doubted Hoyes and Seaboy again.
We didn't doubt them as much as we did last time with the Godsent roster. We learnt from that, but then I don't think either of us thought they'd get out of the group. So yeah, what do you make of or maybe Dusty then? Do you think they're the real deal? Do you think they've got a chance? Because I think they're in a nicer side of the bracket at least. I'd fancy them to get pretty far from.
And they came first in this group. I think you've also got a point that they did actually come first in the end of this group.
Honestly, I think we played abominable against Dusty, and they didn't beat us that quickly. So I'm like, are they the real deal? I'd say no. Are they okay? I guess they're okay. But like, I think it's hard for me to get a read because I think we collapsed so hard on the day against them that they, as far as I'm concerned, they were playing against they weren't playing against a team. Like they were just playing against a free win, and they won pretty comfortably. Maybe I could be pedantic and say they should have won harder, but it's really hard for me to rate them because I just didn't feel in game like they did anything. I just felt like we collapsed, and that doesn't let me get a good read on them as a team.
Yeah,
it's weird with Dusty, especially when you look at kind of the Godsent players and obviously it's a joke at the end of the day, but we had the saying that Godsent had this ability to tilt another team, and we didn't know kind of why. And then it's interesting to see that you've obviously got the coach, and you've got the two players who have gone in there as well. And it's kind of like, did you come into that game thinking that you were not overconfident, but not expecting them to actually perform the way they were, or do you think it was just purely just it just wasn't the right day for Nordavind essentially? They beat both orgs. They beat both Nordavinds. They had to go through the Nordavind wall to get past this.
I don't know how I would answer this. That's not really how I see games. It's usually I think you should be comfortable enough in your own level that you I think if we'd have played 100% that I had seen, we would easily beat every team in this group 2-0. And I still believe that after we completely collapsed. But that's how I view games like this. Is if we'd have shown up at 100%, we would have come top of this group. What we ended up coming out was something like 3%. We didn't just have a bad day. The games against Dusty were atrocious. They were a complete collapse on all layers of the team. So I'm going to think of what the question was now. How I can click it back. What was the question again? I can't even remember.
Oh, the question is this?
Oh,
is
did we
this
come in overconfident?
Yeah, essentially.
It's I knew we were capable of 2-0ing this team, but I don't think that's why we played bad. I think the team collapsed, and I think we the next day we came in. If anything, it was underconfident. So I don't really I don't want to go into details, but the team, the team collapsed for playing in game felt like we were playing 3 versus 8, which it only happens when like your team is so disjointed that you're not like when the enemy team is playing as 5-man and you're not playing as 5-man in 2020 League of Legends. That's like the most important thing. Like player difference really does not matter when one team is playing as a unit and the other isn't, because essentially no matter how good your individual players are, any play they make is just going to get countered by the like team that's playing as a unit. You're almost like just hanging yourself faster, like the more aggressive you try and be and the more you try and actually do anything. So
yeah, the only reason why I bring it up is because there is this like, and I agree that I think it's very rare for a team, I think, to come in overconfident. But I think it's this narrative which I think a lot of people outside think of this, and it's not just in esports, but it's in like traditional sports as well. There's this aura of kind of like whenever an upset happens, it people immediately go into overconfidence, but sometimes I know it sounds really bad, but sometimes it just happens, and it's just one of those. Like, it's not just, it doesn't have to just be one reason. There could be a multitude of reasons why a team can win and a team loses. And that's genuinely what it is. It's normally not just one defining reason.
Like, I don't think we were overconfident. I put Dusty's win against us down to us playing very, very bad. And I don't think us playing very, very bad happened because we thought we were going to beat them. Or I can't even speak for my teammates. I thought we were going to beat them.
Yeah.
After I saw how we were playing, like I didn't think we were going to beat them.
But then at the same point, there still had to be a level. It's not just perhaps like your team playing bad. There still had to be a level where Dusty still had to hit the beats, and it could be a game where Dusty could have played even worse than you saying that you played very bad. So there's always kind of a to and fro. It's not just
like the enemy team can obviously play any level, but like, again, like, that's not how I model it. Like you shouldn't think about the enemy team like you should realize that you yourself are human and treat the enemies as they're not. As weird as that is, like in my opinion, like treat the enemies if they're like the average, they're just gonna hit it, and you just aim to hit your 100%. And if your 100% is not good enough to beat their 100%, then maybe luck is involved and they don't play at the 100% and you win, or maybe they'll randomly combust and they'll play at like 1% and you get a free win. But you shouldn't bank on that, and there's nothing you can really do to influence that. You should just focus on making sure that you as a team are good enough to win a game against anyone by playing your best. Like that should essentially be your goal.
Just as a slight tangent then, do you think that I know it is a big tangent, it's not a slight tangent. Do you think that kind of mentality like helps with solo queue as well? Because I feel like that sometimes like there is this mentality of like, I'm looking at the team, but actually you should just be looking at yourself.
It's one of these things where it's like there's neither like yes and no are both wrong answers. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Like if you ignore the team, you're going to be playing on your own, and if you completely ignore your team, then you're not going to be playing the game properly, which is not beneficial. But if you focus too much on factors you can't control, you're just going to get mad, and it's not productive either. Yeah. So I think it's again, being healthy is somewhere in the middle.
Fair enough. And while we've been on the topic of Dusty as well, their manager Bonnie's been watching. So Bonnie, if you were here earlier when Prosfair was talking about UK players getting tryouts, take notes, yeah. All right, then moving on from the group, we've obviously got the knockouts next.
Right, before we say this, I do want to mention Tricked as well a little bit. Like while I don't think actually Tricked also performed as well as what I expected. Like I'm not gonna lie, I expected Tricked to probably take this group because they again ran their roster entire back. I do think that Tricked as a whole will hopefully get better in the knockout stages, and I wonder if it was a little bit not to the level of Barrage, but a little bit like it just took them a little bit of time to get going. And now obviously it was a 2-1-2-1, so and they did end up losing and had to go. No, they played 6 games actually. They played the full amount. They because they 2-0'd Nordavind Black. So I do think that Tricked actually will hopefully ramp up, and we'll see who's the best out of the 2 teams when we go into the knockout stages, because it's a bit of a mad one.
Yeah, because I think even I saw, I think it was Pad that tweeted it saying like that Barrage is the team to beat, and so if they want to win the tournament themselves, they have to beat them sometime. So obviously it may as well be now because that's who they've got. So it's a bit weird one. So we've kind of ended up with the 2 strongest teams at least on paper, against each other in the first round, which means that we'll see how it ends up later on in the tournament. Could end up with a pretty one-sided
I'm gonna
final.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction.
Yeah.
And say that Absolved are gonna make it to the finals versus Barrage. I think Absolved are the second best team in the tournament.
Wow.
And that's a Hail Mary, and if it works, I look really smart, and if it doesn't,
Well, wait until we get to the predictions on that match, because I might disagree with you a little bit.
Well, let's maybe do some predictions then while we're talking about it. So the quarterfinal matchups then, we start with UNIQ against ENCE. What do we make of that one? So UNIQ is one of the ones from what we see as that kind of weaker group, and then at the same time ENCE maybe not firing on all cylinders just yet. I would think still ENCE would be favourites in my eyes.
I'd give it to ENCE.
Yeah. On paper, I think they're still clearly the stronger roster, and after a bit of a slower start to the groups, you maybe think that they could be able to kick up the backside and they'll come out swinging. So yeah, is any reasons why we think UNIQ could take it? Does anyone see that happening or not?
I think if they get a favourable bot side matchup, that's probably the one way that I would say could happen. But for me, ENCE is quite a difficult team, I think, for UNIQ to face as a whole, because I rate Kievo as an ADC in general anyway. So for me, if it was like a Dusty who they drawn, which personally I think that ENCE's bot lane is better than Dusty's bot lane, I could actually see maybe UNIQ having a bit more of a chance. But because of the team which they've gone against, for me, it's a little bit more of a stylistic clash and favourable to ENCE as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that UNIQ to get to the quarterfinals is really good, and losing to ENCE, which is an NLC organization, is not a bad feat to have. And you never know; you could always give them a chance. The difference is though, maybe if it was best of one, I might have said they could have stolen, but best of three is always a little bit different as well. So normally the better team wins in a best of three. So that's why I would go with ENCE.
Yeah, fair enough. The next one is the one we're talking about as probably the two biggest teams. So we've got Barrage and Tricked. I would imagine Barrage, and I would think everyone's going to agree with me. I wouldn't be surprised. Are you going Tricked, Tom?
I'm going Tricked. Yeah.
Wow, brave.
All right. I'm gonna run this down with you. And it's one word and one word only. Yeah. Think back to Phelan in a certain Forge of Champions tournament where they had this coach called Pad. Yeah. And normally when Pad is in a knockout tournament, does pretty well in them. And for me, this is a knockout tournament. The reason why they went down in the losers bracket so they could have more games to prepare for the knockout stage. They ramp up with every game. But in all seriousness, let's be honest, it's Riddle versus Tricked last season.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, while I think that the Barrage team is actually a really, really solid roster, part of me can never discount, I think, Tricked for the way that they performed in the NLC and the way that they can also perform. We haven't seen the ceiling of both of these two teams and what we saw in the NLC. I think everybody can kind of admit that. And so there is then the chance that maybe this Barrage roster doesn't hit that ceiling and the Tricked roster does. And so it might be a case of who can perform at their maximum first in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Tricked and Barrage face each other in the finals, when there's been games which have been played between the two sides more, then yeah, I would give it Barrage. But there is always, for me, a chance that I could see Tricked winning this. And so just for a cup upset as well, I love a cup upset. I would probably go 2-1 Tricked.
Yeah. What do you reckon then, Prosfair?
I think Barrage will win it. I don't think Tricked played well in the group. I think they squeaked through a group where their quality was not particularly high. And yeah, that's all I think Barrage are just the best team in the tournament, so that's all I have to say. I don't think Tricked have played well so far, and I think Barrage have come out top on the hardest groups, so it's kind of easy for me to say. I think they have better players in every position. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that. Maybe not, actually. Okay.
I would put a Chu above Rege, if I'm being honest. But that's personal opinion.
I might, but I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think a Chu is better than Rehe, but I also don't think Achu is the kind of AD to particularly like abuse.
He's not the focal. He's not the focal. He's not the focal point of the team.
Even if I say he's better, he's like this much better, and he's
Mm.
not the kind of AD that uses a like skill disparity.
Mm-hmm.
I think support's kind of a wash as well, but I just think top side is like quite a big difference for Barrage.
Yeah, because I think from the wins that Tricked got, I thought Soft actually looked really quite good, and
Yeah.
not to rub salt in the wounds against you guys. He was, especially I think it was the first game. He was like proper popping
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, he had a good Hecarim game.
And then you put him against like a top
But
side
it's against
like
Maxi though.
Doxy
The
and
issue
Maxi,
is,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, it's going to be a lot harder to look that good, I think. So, yeah, I would expect maybe one game at least for Tricked. I wouldn't think it's a 2-0. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough for them. I would see Barrage coming out on top in the end, and yeah, probably winning the whole thing. To be fair.
Yeah.
Then after that, we've got Dusty against Viking.
But can I just say, you when it was the UKLC, I remember doing a certain podcast, and I said it's going to be 3-2 to Fnatic, and XL are going to be 2-0 up. Yeah.
That was to claw back points, Tom, and you know it. That was a hopeful. Yeah. Well, then do the lottery numbers, Tom, because that one was like way too specific.
No, if there was one day
got.
for me to do the lottery, it would have been that day. Yeah, because that was the luckiest prediction I think I've ever done in my life. There was no way. Purely did it just so I could get ground on points, but it worked.
Yeah, because I don't know who we had on, but the guess was a 3-0, as like everyone thought. I went 3-1 to try and get some points and not be the same prediction, and then that left you with a 3-2, which was like looked like the worst one. Oh no, and then you went completely the opposite way, 3-2 Fnatic. But sometimes, sometimes you can end up looking mental, and other times it comes off and it looks genius. So
yeah, this could be a bad one for me, especially for us 2-0. Like.
We'll see. But yeah, after that then is Dusty against Viking. Now, obviously Viking was one that kind of got through, at least in my eyes, against the odds. Obviously, I'd gone for them in like my D or E tier somewhere. I would still, obviously that they were better than I expected at least, and they got through. But I would still see Dusty as a step above. You mentioned Prosfair. Maybe you didn't think Dusty played maybe as well as other teams made them look. But I think at least like as cohesion-wise, they looked really good, and it was a similar sort of thing that I saw with Godsent, where that's what kind of looked like that got them some of the upset wins, was that they were all on the same page. I think maybe some credit goes maybe to Vendetto for that. Obviously, the same coach and the same jungle and ADC. So I don't know if like C-Boy does much of the shot calling. Sorry. But you'd imagine it's kind of between him and Vendetto that maybe is a part of a reason why this team as well, straight out the gates, does look quite cohesive. And I think in a shorter cup tournament like this could be the difference, especially early on, like we are still.
Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about Dusty. Or maybe I've said something bad previously, but like I think Dusty are like what I've seen. It's just I can't rate Dusty as good because, in my opinion, I don't.
Maybe it was the expectation of what you thought your squad was.
Maybe this is treasonous to say, but I don't think either of the. I think we played terribly. I don't think the other Nordavind team was particularly good, and I think Tricked played bad in this group. So I think Dusty played well and just cruised on, playing well against teams that played bad. Like I think that's my read on this group. Is like you say like, oh yeah, like Soft looked good against us, but like I almost like I'm in my head I'm like discounting Dusty's performance against us and Trick's performance against us as like relevant, because I think we played so bad we would have lost to like any team in this tournament essentially, and they would have looked good doing it. So it's like, to me, like what I want to see is like, even though we like cause I'm playing the game and we're inting, like I feel like the game is impossible to play, and even then Tricked like PlayStation flashing under tower like level 4 and dying like as far as I'm like, that's just a game losing play if we were just playing the game, or if you're against any good team. So like to me that's my read on Group D is it's a team that collapsed, a team that played bad, two teams that played bad, and then a team that just played okay. Yeah. So maybe Dusty are better than okay, but I didn't get a chance to see because they were beating up on bad teams.
Yeah,
But
the potential level might have been skewed because of underperformance.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, I still think they were good, and I think they should beat Viking comfortably.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm. It's weird because I did put Viking. So when I put Viking in A tier, I put it, and I think I even mentioned this. I put it in respective to actually you look at actually the tournament as a whole. Like the groups were out, and so I did probably rate Viking a little bit higher, but because of the competition they were playing, that's why I rated them a little bit higher on a tier list. But I would probably go for Dusty. I think Dusty. Yeah, in terms of quality, I think they've got the better quality players now. Viking could actually do something here, but for me, Viking didn't even top the group, and my confidence in Viking went down as soon as they didn't, because I actually thought they were a lot better than what I expected. I thought they were a lot better than actually what they were. So yeah, for me, it's gonna have to go to Dusty. I'll probably go I'll go a 2-0, but not like a stomp. You know, I think you can go a 2-0 and it not be, you know, a definitive like one team won. It can be a back and forth as well.
Definitely. Then the last one we have is NVision against Absolved. So Tom, you hinted earlier you might have some sort.
Yeah,
of
I think NVision are winning this. I'm going the complete opposite of Prosfair, and I think it'll be NVision. NVision tricked, or probably NVision barrage, if I'm being completely honest, in the finals. I think that whoever wins this kind of knockout, because of the way that the format is, and because of the way that who they will face afterwards, I think it's a good shout for both NVision and Absolved to get far, and probably whoever's going to win this is making it to the final. I was really impressed with NVision. Like I've said, I went on them a little bit before how I thought the known quantities played very well, and then their unknown quantities played better than what I thought. And so I think while it will be a challenge, and like I said, I've also praised Absolved with the bot lane especially, I think that NVision might have their match, but it could be one of those games where as soon as I see these two's face in the first game, like in the first 5 minutes, I might be like, oh no, this team's the better team. It's difficult to kind of judge these two rosters when they haven't faced each other, and they're all quite new rosters against each other anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I'd probably give the edge, I think, to Absolved. I'm not sure it'll be. Well, I don't know. If I had to predict, I'd probably say like a 2-1, because it's one I'm not like 100% sure. I think, yeah, kind of it could be either way. Absolved, like you said, Prosfair, I think, we're in what you said about, I think it was Barrage topping the hardest group, and Absolved obviously got through that as well. And I think I'd put them like bottom in that group on the tier list. So obviously done better than I expected to get out, and I think getting through a group like that, probably shows on paper they're slightly above NVision. So yeah, I'd go for a 2-1, but I wouldn't be overly surprised to be wrong, as I have been so far throughout the whole of the cup. So
yeah, I think it'll be 2-1 Absolved. I think Absolved are just slightly better and will edge it out, but I think NVision will probably. I think this is one that's going to come. It'll be 2-1 because there'll be some adaptation coming in from both the teams, and both teams have good players that are going to not just like play the same game out again. Like there'll be a side difference, there'll be a strategy coming in. So I see this being 2-1 to Absolved because I think they're the better team, but I don't think it'll be a clean sweep.
Yeah.
While I think that like. Well, I kind of agree that if we're being honest, and this is me being completely honest here, I think that there are 4 really good teams in this quality of the knockout, and then 2 of them are the 2 matches are basically going up against each other. And while it probably would have been better to maybe have like a Dusty versus an NVision, it's just the way that the group has worked, as we've talked about with seeding. I think that I'm more excited about the NVision Absolved match than I am the Barrage Tricked, because again, despite me picking Tricked, like there is this perception where I'm like, Barrage, I think, are going to wipe it. And maybe that's why I've gone for Tricked, to think that there's something more to it. Well, with this NVision Absolved one, like analytically, not storyline out of the window and stuff like that, I think that's the hardest game to predict out of the 4 anyway.
Yeah.
I'd agree. With that then, let's we can sort of maybe come
Wait. So Lee, like Prosfair's done his finals. I've done my finals. You're not getting out of it. What's your finals?
Let me see the bracket once more. Well, Barrage,
I mean,
on
you'll
their
be the
side,
same.
definitely.
You'll be the same as me then. It's you think it's Absolved or Dusty if you think Absolved will beat NVision.
Could have been ENCE.
No. I'd say Barrage Dusty for what I've seen so far, I think.
Oh wow.
There you go. That's on the record. So
I
before we
love it.
finish...
I love it when it's on the record because when it's off the record, there's been many times where we've predicted things, but it's like, oh, we don't need to publicly mention it because we haven't said it like on Twitter or anything like that. As soon as you say it on Twitter or on here, that's it. You just have to own it.
Yeah. That's why I'm not pointing a finger. Someone that off the record has maybe changed predictions at the last minute before, or not showing
I don't know
the
what you're talking
ultimate confidence.
I don't know what
Anyway,
you're talking about.
before we finish up, then Prosfair, just want to ask you what your kind of plans are now. Then, so obviously you're back to a free agent pretty much now. I'd imagine
Yep.
there's not much going on until next season, but is there a plan of at least where you want to play? Are you going to be mainly looking around the NLC, or obviously I think what you kind of mentioned a bit about earlier about the residency changes in some of the leagues, obviously making it a bit harder to go
Yep.
elsewhere. But is it, any plans so far?
I mean, I don't really have a preference on where I play. Again, like as long as I think I just take the best roster, like the one that I think can do the best at EU Masters, or that I have the best chance of developing on whatever it is. Like I'll have to see what the offers I get are, but it comes down to just that, like results, development, money. I guess is like the third. It's like in this order. Let's see what combination of things I get, and let's take the best one.
Fair enough.
And
then last thing from me was just on the new changes. Obviously, like the new items have gone live today. Have you had a chance to play around with it?
I played quite a bit actually.
What are your thoughts? Is there anything that stands out being mega OP so far? Because actually, one thing I do always ask, I probably even asked you when you were on, is for potential comps in Clash when there's a Clash coming up, and there is this weekend in my low elo with me and my friends. So, is there anything that stood out to you as being OP early on that we could maybe abuse?
I feel like Rakan is probably really strong for support. He benefits really well with a lot of the new items, I think. Like you can buy almost anything on this champion just because of his like the way he works. So I'd say that's pretty good. Katarina looks disgusting. Honestly, I'd say there are just a few mythic items that are really broken, and people who abuse the like AP bruisers seem to be really good. AP dot champions, like there's like Leandries, and I can't remember what it's called, but there's like there's another item that like adds to it. And if you're Cassio or Teemo, you press Q on someone and they die. Like you walk on a Teemo stream and you die from full. If he has these two items, or Cassio Qs you and you lose 90% of your health with these two items. The last one would be I played a game as Red Kane. I think Blue Kane is terrible. The items are really bad for him, the new lethality items. But Red Kane, the new Death Stance, the new Sterax Gauge, Spirit Visage, I can't think what the item's called, but the one that's like it's got the Tiamat active on it. It's essentially the
Ravenous Hydra.
It's got the Ravenous Hydra active, not passive on it. Yeah. These all are just like you heal when you're low, you heal when you hit champions. The new Domination, the new Ravenous Hunter is excellent on him. Like I was inside 5 people on 10 health, I hit Q and I healed to full, and everyone I was playing with just went that's broken. Like yesterday, Red Kane could not do that. Like you had to. It was not physically possible for him to heal 3,000 health in one ability, and it now is. And that seems pretty broken to me. Like there's.
That's why they do it in pre-season, isn't it? Though, like I understand this, but there's going to probably be changes to a lot of these items. I can definitely see.
But yeah, like I think damage is really high across the board. Yeah. That would be my main thing. Is like the AP items seem broken. I think AP champions are a bit better than AD champions. But these things are like again, it's the first day. I think people were saying like, oh, tanks are going to be bad, and it looks like tanks are really OP actually. But maybe in like 2 days, people are like, oh, we were overreacting. Tanks aren't good. Damage dealers are good if you know how to build them. But yeah, like that would be my two cents. Is like Red Kane for sure from personal experience is broken, and I think dot champions are broken with the items.
Nice. All right, cool then. I think we'll leave it at that then and wrap up. It's been actually a really long one. Usually, like this length of time, like pushing 2 hours, it's just for me and Tom on our own when we just keep rambling around him. But it's been a good one. We've covered a lot. So yeah, thanks for coming on. And
yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Hope we'll have you on next season. Once you've got a team, we'll have you on again in a few months. So yeah, that'll wrap it up then. And for those watching still, if there's anyone knocking about still on Twitch, please do feel free to drop a follow on there so you see when we're next live. Otherwise, if you're listening later on Spotify or YouTube, you can follow there too. And our Twitters, our personal Twitters are all on the screen as well, so do feel free to follow us directly. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.